Hello, I'm Toby Barclay from Heritage Guns. We're out of Suffolk in the UK. What I'd like to try and explain to you today is what we look for when we're buying a gun for restoration. Most of our guns come into us from auction, occasionally from the odd gun shop who has something handed in which they don't quite know what to do with. And what we're looking for initially is quality. Guns made by the very famous makers can of course be fantastic, but they made some pretty ordinary guns, especially in their early years. On the other side of the coin, smaller makers, perhaps even completely unknown makers, have made some fantastic guns, and often you find that the details, the patents, the mechanisms are more unusual, just as reliable, but more interesting. So once you've got the quality aspect out of the way, then you're looking at three major issues. The first one is barrels. To re-barrel a gun, you are going to be looking at many thousands of dollars, perhaps $12,000 to re-barrel a gun. To sleeve a gun, it's probably going to be in the region of $2,000 to $3,000, and both of those are going to reduce the value of the gun. Now, a set of original barrels are very nice, but to export from the UK, they have got to be in proof. If they're not in proof, we're not allowed to export. So it's all very well having a lovely set of barrels, but if they're not going to pass proof, they might as well be replaced or sleeved. The second big issue is wood. To restock a gun, you're probably looking at something in the order of about $7,000 to $8,000. Now, that's a big lump of money, and obviously if the quality's there and the name is good on the gun, then perhaps it's going to be worthwhile. But small repairs, checkering, refinishing and things like that, they're reasonably economic things to do. You can fix up a gun quite nicely and make it really look the part, but restocking is a whole new ball game. The third big issue is engraving. Now, engraving on soft metal like trigger guards, top levers, pins and the like, that's not a big deal. I have access to some of the best engravers in the UK, and we can get things looking really pretty and correct as well. But hard metal, you're going to be having to soften, re-harden. The actual engraving itself is very complex, and so rarely does that make any sense at all. And I'm not a great fan of re-hardening guns. Now, to take a gun and look at it and show you what I've been talking about, we have here a gun by Atkin, Henry Atkin, often titled himself Henry Atkin from Purdy. It's a very unusual gun in many respects, and so in its own way it represents most of the issues that I've been talking about. The barrels, this gun was originally made with Damascus barrels, but it was re-barreled, we can only assume, by Henry Atkin right in the early days. So they're steel barrels, which is, in some cases, some people like steel barrels, other people prefer Damascus. I'm neither one way or the other, but they're it's a very early re-barreling job. And they're also a good length. They're 29 inch, I think these are, and they've got perfectly acceptable wall thicknesses, some choke, 2.5 inch nitro proof. The wood is probably original. It's got lovely figure. We've refinished it, we've freshened the checkering. I think I reset the oval on this because it was standing a little proud, put a leather covered recoil pad on it. But fortunately in this particular instance we had to do very little re-engraving. I think we had a tiny little bit done on the trigger guard, but other than that the pins, replaced a few pins, but other than that not much else. The wonderful thing about this gun is that it is almost one of a kind. It has this very unusual thumb lever which you often see on hammer guns, but you very, very rarely see on a hammerless gun. So that's one interesting thing. The second thing is about this gun, which makes it so interesting, is it's actually a hammer gun without hammers. Now that sounds a bit weird, but the locks here have a half cock position. So when you're cocking it, you hear it do 2 clicks, which is unheard of in a hammerless gun. So it dates it from right the transition from hammered to hammerless. So basically this gun, even though it's not from what people would expect as a top tier maker, even though Henry Atkin certainly was up there with the best, he trained with Purdy after all, you've got a gun which represents so many interesting, valuable characteristics. Great wood, great barrels, fantastic engraving, a certain amount of colour left over from when it was originally made. I mean, and interesting patents, a thumb lever where it shouldn't be, a lock design which is probably unique. It's just a great gun. Anyway, guns like this are few and far between, but when they come up, we just love to find them. So that's a good example of what we're looking for.